screen with a light bulb on and a brain. And that is because I wanted to know who was brand new to the idea of deliberate practice. So who was like, oh, I never heard of this thing on PodPlus, on the podcast last week, and who kind of sort of knew all about it already. So who was new to the concept and who knew all about it already. Put a star, there you go with the stars. Put a star on my screen, whether you are sort of brand new or you knew all about it, on the brain or the light bulb. If you do not know how to do stars on screens, do not worry, we are here to tell you how. Go towards the top of your Zoom screen, you should see view options, click on that, and then annotate will be there. And then you'll probably get a little toolbar. You want the stamp. I think it shows a little tick, and then click on that, and then you want the star. So view options, annotate, stamp and star, view options, annotate, stamp and star. Thank you, everybody. Ooh, new to the idea. The people that knew all about it, so kind of it's already in your brain, where did you come across the idea from? What was your kind of source of knowledge? It's something I'm new to, but I could create a mental image of what they sound like in my head. Brilliant, Sam. Brand new. The people that already had some knowledge about deliberate practice, where did you? Interesting, Laura. Counselling training. Interesting. How did it come up in counselling training? Nursing. I would never have known that was what you were talking about. Tell me more, Micah. Why does it come up in nursing? Research training. Teacher leadership training. Very interesting. I did not know it was kind of weaving its way into those areas in terms of reflecting on practice and practice development. Interesting. Counselling again. So 2 people saying it's coming in counselling. Anna looked after into reading Outliers, which is a Malcolm Gladwell book. I love a bit of Malcolm Gladwell. I really enjoyed, side point, everybody. I had a subscription to Masterclass, and Malcolm Gladwell has got a course on storytelling on Masterclass, and I really enjoyed it. He's just got one of those lovely brains. It's quite nice to follow. Cool. Okay, maybe it was Outliers. Well, the person who is, I'm going to get rid of your stars. As lovely it is to put stars on Anders Ericsson's face. I'm going to take them off. Yes, this person in front of us now is Anders Ericsson, and he's the person who's done the most work on this idea of deliberate practice. So if you kind of do want to really dive into it, here is your go-to guru. One thing I would say about Anders Ericsson's work on deliberate practice is it's very focused on sort of sports and athletes and, you know, Steve's Olympic archer type vibes. And so it's really interesting. It's really interesting, you know, how they become an absolute expert in their sort of domain. But I think it might feel a little bit far away from what you do every day. Like, I don't want to be an Olympic athlete. I'm like, great for the people that do. I just want to get better at squiggly careers. So what I would say is it's really interesting and insightful, but it's quite an extreme view, because these are like the very, very top people. It's almost like what the super successful, mainly in kind of a sports territory, what they do to kind of be amazing. So if you do dive into that work, it's really insightful, but I think you kind of have to zoom out a little bit to connect it to sort of someone's everyday career, where we're kind of just trying to get a bit better at meetings or presentations or whatever the thing is. I think perhaps a complementary or more relatable perspective on deliberate practice comes from Angela Duckworth. Angela Duckworth has done, so she's done the book on grit. She talks a lot about kind of grit and perseverance. Have I still got this link here for you? Oh, wait, everyone, that wasn't supposed to happen. Wait, have I still got this link here for you? I have. So this is one of the talks, really short talk that Angela Duckworth has got on deliberate practice. It's titled Grit and Perseverance. You can just Google Angela Duckworth deliberate practice, and there's quite a few videos. I think it is more connected to what we do at work. That's why I'm kind of recommending her. And she sort of focuses on the difference between just doing kind of more of the same thing versus being deliberate about how we practice it. And I think one of the examples she talks about, and again, it's kind of like a sport one rather than a work related one, but it kind of clicked with me when she said it. She, in the link that I've shared with you, it's a really short clip. She talks about how she wasn't kind of getting better at running. I think she was having a conversation with Anders Ericsson about this concept of deliberate practice. And she was like, well, look, you know, I run every day and my times aren't getting any better. You know, I'm sort of doing and practicing running every day, but I'm not necessarily improving. and someone challenged her and said, well, have you got a specific goal in mind? Like, are you trying to, improve a fitness thing? Or are you trying to be faster in your running? Or are you trying to go further? Like, what's your goal? And she was like, I don't know. I just get out and I just run. And they were like, oh, okay. When you're running, are you really focused when you're running? She was like, oh no, I just sort of listen to podcasts, I look around me, and I was like, oh, okay, not a lot of focus. And then there was the person said, and are you kind of reflecting at the end of your run on how it went? And she's like, no, I'm just taking my shoes off and doing what I need to do next. And then basically said, and are you doing anything different every day? She's like, no. And then the point really is that doing is different to deliberate practice, because when we are engaging in deliberate practice, it is a very intentional effort. It's effortful, and the intention is improvement. It's not just doing. So it's not just I'm going to keep doing presentations and hope I get better. It is intentional improvement, which is achieved through deliberate practice. And there are 4 elements that are really key to deliberate practice. So you don't just put your shoes on and run. You don't just do another presentation. You've got to have these 4 things in place for it to happen. So the first is that you've got to have a defined goal. It's got to be specific. So even if you're thinking, oh, I want to get better at presentations, that's a bit too big. You want to think about what kind of presentations and where are those presentations being delivered and who am I presenting to, so that you can really get clear on what specifically is it I'm trying to improve. Because if it's too big, it's too hard to do the next bits we're going to talk about. And I'm just going to go through the 4 stages, and then we're going to reflect on a group about what this might look like for us, so we can almost get like a deliberate practice kind of goal and plan together. But the first thing is your goal's got to be super specific, almost quite small, to be honest, like an element at a time. Once you've got your goal in mind, the next thing is you've got to practice it. So, but we need like a practice plan. And what's really important with practice is 2 things. So the first is attention. So we've got to be like, this is me practicing it, and my brain is very focused on kind of getting this a bit better. So the attention's really important. So I think one of the things I talked about on the podcast is that one of the things that I repeatedly don't do very well is opening and closing presentations. Like I kind of just like, hi, and I just dive into it and hope it's okay. I don't do a really compelling start to a presentation, I don't think. And so what I would need to do is be like, today, this presentation is one where I'm going to practice sort of doing something different, and I'm not going to get distracted by, chitter chatter. I'm going to be very, very present at practicing that thing. The other thing that's really important, as well as attention, is retention. So for that, they talk about spacing when you're practicing. So it's not, I'm just going to practice this 20 times this week. You kind of need to have some consolidation of the learning. So you might be like, I'm going to do this 3 times this week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then I have some sort of space in between. Our brain learns better, apparently, with spacing. I found that quite interesting. So practice is intentional. We need to design for attention and retention. So attention, you've got to have the focus. Retention, you've got to have a bit of space designed in. Third thing, and then I'm going to look at all your lovely comments in a minute, is feedback. So after we have done this intentional practice, we need to get some feedback, and that can be self-feedback, so reflection. How did I do versus what I wanted to do? And supported feedback. So feedback that can come from other people or other places. So maybe you've got, somebody who is aware of the thing that you're trying to deliberately practice and is helping you, giving you that bit more data for your development. But you've got to have a feedback loop in place. So for Angela Duckworth on running, maybe she's got Strava on a device, and that's given us some data about how far she's running, or how many, I don't know, the distance. I'm not a runner, I don't know, but it's giving us some feedback, basically, isn't it? Giving us some data. And maybe she's going to run with somebody else who can give her some feedback on her gait. Is that the right term? Your running gait, like your running style. So she's getting kind of feedback from someone else, and then feedback, kind of self-feedback. And then then that just kind of enables us to adapt our approach. So we've got that data, we've got that feedback. We kind of think, oh, I'm going to tweak that slightly. The next time I do that presentation, I'm going to try to do my introduction in 30 seconds and do a pause, because I realized it went on for quite a long time. This time I'm going to do it a bit shorter. So you adapt it, goes into your goal, and you practice, practice, practice. That's the cycle. That is why it is not just doing, because these things are, they're very specific parts of the process for deliberate practice. Before we get into it, and I thought we could kind of work this through together and kind of just have some time to think, what would this look like for me, and try to help each other a little bit. Before we get into it, any questions or reflections on kind of the process generally? I'm going to have a look here. What have we got here? Could this link to Kolb's learning cycle as well? Yeah, I guess it could. Yeah, I guess it could as a way of kind of learning. Yeah, it's funny, Jamie, actually, we're writing. The reason we ended up kind of talking about deliberate practice is because Sarah and I are writing our new book, which is very, very focused on how we can learn and how we can learn better. Kolb's learning cycle and deliberate practice kind of came into our thinking on that. It's quite interesting. It reminds me of reflective practice in coaching training. Oh, Anna, you'll like the new book. You'll like the new book. It's all about creative ways you can match a learning style to a situation, but not the standard learning styles. We've got new learning styles. Kind of being like, have you heard of that thing, situational leadership? I think it's Ken Blanchard that did situational leadership. This is more about situational learning. That's basically kind of what the book's all about, but in an exciting, amazing if kind of way. I shouldn't give too much away. I'm not even supposed to be talking about it yet. Shh. Everyone. So much what we've got here, so much feedback has come to other people. Even if you video yourself doing a sport, you might still need someone to spot something easy. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I've just seen someone with the surname Attenborough has come into PodPlus. Always makes me excited. Any relation? Okay, this one's super interesting. I guess the only thing I wonder with the goals is how to remain consistent once our goals are met. Interesting, Carolina. I also think, when do you stop? That's in my mind. Do you ever stop? Am I supposed to just deliberately practice my intros and outros forever? Or is there a point that I go, I'm good enough, I'm going to shift my deliberate practice effort onto something else? Because I think that is actually, that is an important point to make. You can't really deliberately practice a lot of things at once. You've got this, because this takes quite a lot of effort, you're best having like a particular thing that you want to deliberately practice. So I think for me, knowing what sort of good or good enough, like where do you want to get to, basically, and then that's the point perhaps where that becomes just part of the way that you do your work, and then you shift this focus of deliberate practice onto something else. Oh, I will look up, I'm writing that down, Jamie. Stella Collins is going on my research list for later, because I have not come across her work. So what I thought we'd do now, no real new news, that is deliberate practice. What I thought we might do is take a bit of time to think, well, what could this look like for me? Maybe share as we go in chat, so that we can help each other to maybe build it a little bit better. So, for example, first of all, we need a defined goal. So remember, this needs to be super specific, ideally quite small. So let's take a moment, and if you're ready, like, just put it into chat. But what is something that you want to get better at? Something specific that you think, I think I could apply this principle of deliberate practice to this thing that I want to improve. And for anyone that's willing, either you just write it down for yourself, or if you're willing, put it into chat, because then maybe we can either encourage that or kind of give you some feedback, or try and make it a little bit more specific. So what have we got here? So Michelle has got grammar and proofreading. Rima has got become more strategic about networking. That's an interesting one. Sam's, I want to get better at cold introducing myself to people at in-person events. Sam, I think that is a very super specific one. Brilliant. That first introduction specifically at an in-person event. Brilliant. Public speaking. So Yana, public speaking, might want to get a tiny bit more specific on that one. So is that at work? Is that to audiences that you don't know? Is it small groups? Is it big groups? Let's kind of maybe like add a tiny bit more to that one for you. Brilliant. Oh yes, I do know the scarf model. Thank you. And David Rock, thanks, Jamie. I like this one, Elaine. Making executive summaries to roll up to external stakeholders. I mean, Elaine, I feel like ChatGPT might have you sorted. Like, I mean, obviously deliberately practice it and don't outsource your work to ChatGPT, but like it could be. Do you know what it could when we get onto feedback, it could be quite a good one for feedback, because you could write it and then you could, you know, stick it into ChatGPT and you could compare. Could be. What else have we got here? Presenting to large numbers of people. What else have we got here? Being more communicative. Again, Sam, we might want to, I mean, feedback, I think you're very communicative, can't say it, but might want to think about what situations to what people or what situations for that one, just so we can kind of help a little bit more. Presenting authentically, Sam, again, is that virtual? Is it in person? Is it big groups? Is it small groups? Is it when you're talking about a particular thing? Maybe have a think about that one. Oh, Katie's gone through the process of starting quite big and then getting more specific. I was going to have my defined goal as getting comfortable public speaking, but then I thought it was too big. So I've redone it as improve my concision when having ad hoc conversations with senior people. Ah, got it. So specifically with senior people. Brilliant. Okay. So I think you know yours, everybody. So I think get confident on camera 2 at the basketball. Anna, I feel like we're in your world of like Olympic camera stuff now. It's very exciting. Okay, so most important here is have a goal, but make sure that it is defined and specific. So anyone that thinks, oh, you might be like, I've nailed that, Helen, or you might think, well, I might want to just do something a bit different. Now let's think about you creating a practice plan. So whatever your goal is, remember, this plan means when are we going to practice it and where, and how do we make sure that we've got like high attention in that situation? So, you know, if you're going to practice being concise with senior people with that kind of introduction, how are you going to practice it? Are you going to try and do it once a week? Are you going to put yourself in a situation where that's going to happen? And how are you going to make sure that like you're like, this is my moment. So this is my practice moment. What's that going to look like for you? So everybody, if you're designing a practice plan, we're not going to leave this to chance, because that's not deliberate practice. It's not, I'm just going to wait for a presentation so I can practice. This needs to be like intentional. So how are you going to make sure this happens? And when it happens, how are you going to make sure it happens well? Does that make sense? How are you going to make sure it happens, everyone? Yeah, Onyeka, I tend to cover the fact that I haven't really thought about it just by being like jolly and happy and hoping for the best. What do we think, everyone? This one seems a bit harder. How are you going to make sure this happens? This thing that you want to do. So Anna, on camera 2, how are we going to make sure that we're practicing this and we're not just sort of doing it when it happens? Okay, so Sam, you're going to write down your thoughts. Katie says, I've got a one-to-one with our VP every week. She's the person. Okay, brilliant. So really, really clear on that kind of, that's the moment in time. Steve, I'm going to volunteer. Jess, offer take the lead in meetings, even though it's scary. Brilliant. Is there one that you can do in the next week? I mean, that would be an amazing outcome. You're like, right, I'm gonna do it. Put myself in new situations where I'm meeting new people, but in a non-business crucial environment. Okay, how come, so Caroline, that might be, I think, a non-business crucial environment. Often professional networks are quite good for that, because it's sort of relevant to your role. So there's sort of like a reason to do it. There's a reason to have the chat, but you're probably going to meet quite a lot of new people. So maybe kind of looking for those sort of professional groups around your kind of around your career could be useful. Absolutely, Katie. Kind of like exposing in that one area will hopefully make you more comfortable in others. Oh, was that Helen? Was yours deliberate practice with the nutrition? Deliberate practice with daily eating habits to maximize energy levels. I'm just going to say it. I'm not on commission, but I have been taking Heights since the start of the year. It's given me loads more energy. Heights, Dan Murray Serter is the founder. He's kind of like a contact in the marketing world and podcast world. And he's got a business called Heights. And I've been taking Heights I like since the start of the year. It's given me loads of energy. So anyone who's into nutrition, have a look. Not on commission, just genuinely trying them out and quite like them. Caroline, Heights is great. Oh, you like it too, Micah? Yeah, I'm a fan. AG1. I know that's the greens one, isn't it, Katie? It's very expensive. I can only take so many things if I get to do it. Attending the Keynote Club, brilliant. Oh, very specific, Naomi. Attending the Keynote Club every fortnight, and then meetings with SLT to share updates. Brilliant, great. Okay, so you need a practice plan, everyone. The point is, we're not just letting this happen. Like, we need to know what we want to improve upon, and then we've got to be really specific about how are we going to create the opportunity for that practice to happen. And when we are practicing, how do we make sure we're focused? Like, you just got to design that stuff in. Second one is your feedback loops. So let's be really clear. How are you going to get feedback? Feedback. So are you going to collect some kind of data? Is there a way that you can, like the length of your introduction? I could record my meetings, for example, and I could just look at, well, how long did I talk? I could just analyze that little bit. And actually the software, Microsoft Teams have got software, Poised have got software that can give you feedback on your presentations, like the pace, the pitch, filler words, all that kind of stuff. If you've got a similar one to me around sort of introductions or presentations, they would be a good source of feedback, a good source of data for you. How are you going to get feedback, everyone? What is that going to look like for you? So Anna, Olympic Anna, that's what you're now called in my mind, Anna. Do personal feedback at the end, and then watch back to basketball at the end of the game. Ask the director for feedback. Brilliant. B, making time for reflection after coaching. Fantastic. What else? Use speaker coaching team. Yeah, Glynis, that's the name of it, isn't it? That's the Microsoft Teams bit. I haven't enabled that yet. Can you share those apps? Yeah, Jackie, so speaker coach, that's the one that Glynis has mentioned. That's in Microsoft Teams. So it depends if your company has got I think it's like Teams Enterprise Edition or whatever. But there is something called Poised, which I've used before, which basically it links to Teams or Zoom, and then it gives you instant feedback, like in the meeting. It's a little bit distracting in the meeting. It gives you instant feedback on pace, pitch, how many questions you've asked. And then after the meeting, you can go into the Poised app and get a summary of the meeting. It's good. It's really good. We talked about it on our podcast about AI tools. Speaker coaching teams, I find it useful. Brilliant. I talk at my creative writing course. Feedback's focused on what we write, but I can ask people for their feedback too. Fantastic. Journaling and being open to feedback and feed forward for others. Okay, so you've got to just build that feedback mechanism in. I think the trick here is to make sure that you're getting that yourself, that kind of that reflective feedback, but you're confident enough to get it from other people. To Steve's point earlier, other people will see things that you can't, things that you're doing brilliantly. Like, don't forget, we've all got a negativity bias in our brain. So it's very easy for us to anchor to the stuff that didn't go very well, but actually other people can help spot the stuff that we did really well that we want to keep doing. Like, this doesn't always have to be about stopping doing stuff. It can be about continuing doing stuff that was really effective. So maybe because of that bias in our brain, it makes it even more useful to have someone else. The last one, adapt. I was reflecting on this and I was thinking, well, to be honest, it's a little bit specific to what you're doing, like how, and you don't know what that adapt needs to be until you get the feedback. However, I was thinking that it might be useful in advance to have almost like a list of variables that you could experiment with. So for example, I already know that if I want to improve my introductions, then the variables that I could experiment with are the length, like how long I do that introduction for. I could maybe experiment with, does it always have to be me talking? Could I do my introduction with a video? Or could I do my introduction with a drawing? Like, I could probably already sit down and write down, well, what are all the things that I could experiment with? And angles on a camera, intros into a conversation with somebody, ways that you go, in a room if you're meeting people for the first time. What are all those little things that you could already think about? Well, I could experiment with this. I think if you have that in your head at the start, it might help you a little bit more with the adaptations. So with the example of Angie Duckworth on running, she could experiment with different shoes, she could experiment with different music, she could experiment with a different route, a different length of run. Having those in your head, I think, to start with might help you a little bit more to think, what could I do differently? How could I kind of experiment and improve in this area? So that's it, everybody. I have no more to say. But other than, I think deliberate practice is a really important way that we can get better at things, this kind of intentional effort, one thing at once because of how far it takes, and just kind of follow the process, really. The only other thing I think it might help is have a bit of a learning buddy with this. So maybe two people. You could always buddy up with someone in the Squiggly Careers community, particularly if there's something you want to improve upon together. That would be probably my only other build. But we will leave it there for now, if that is okay. I think next week's podcast, if I've got my timers right in my head, we'll see, it is on career red flags. So we're talking about what things to basically spot as soon as you see them, because they're going to get in the way of your growth. So we've got like 5 career red flags, and then we've got ideas for action if you kind of spot that red flag happening for your development. I think that's next week's episode. If it's not next week, it'll be the week after. So you're getting a sneak peek. But otherwise, everybody, I will leave it there for this week. I hope that has been useful. I hope there are some things you want to practice. And we will be back with you again very soon. Take care, everybody.